Call the Capitola City Council meeting for May 12th to order, and we'll begin with the roll call.
Councilmember Norton.
Here.
Councilmember Harlan.
Here.
Councilmember Tran.
Here.
Councilmember Termini.
Here.
Mayor Bottorff.
Here, and Vice Mayor Harlan, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, it looks like we have a presentation, new employee. This Eddie Ray Garcia going to take care of this?
It is my pleasure to introduce the newest member of our Public Works team, Thomas Dixon. Okay. Tom comes to us with a background in landscaping, landscape design, irrigation, so we're very excited to have him part of our team, and we're going to put him to work.
Excellent. Good. Is he going to start on Stockton Bridge?
That's next week. Okay. Where do you got going?
Okay. Say a few words, Thomas. Tell us about yourself.
Native Californian. I think maybe 8th generation Californian. I'm not quite sure, but my dad just recently did the DNA stuff, and a lot of Irish in me. I burn easy. That's one thing that's feeding me.
Landscaping, perfect business.
But yeah, I'm happy to join the team.
Welcome aboard now.
Yeah, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eddie Ray. Two, any additional materials?
No additional materials.
Okay. City Manager, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Staff does have one change to the agenda this evening. We would recommend taking item 10C off this evening's agenda. We need to continue that item to a future date.
Okay, that'll be fine. 10C removed. Okay, that'll bring us to the public comment period. This is a time when we allow members of the public to come and address the City Council on any item that is not on the agenda. So if you'd like to come up and sign in the roster there and tell us what city you're from. Hello, Mr. Piercy.
Hi, my name's Steve Piercy. I'm from SoCal. I'm on the other side of the Great Wall of Highway 1, your neighbor to the north. And I'm here today to just talk about briefly three things. One was Bike to Work Day was today, and over at New Brighton Middle School, we had over 150 kids biking, walking, and skating, and unicycling to school today, and it was a fantastic event where the kids got free breakfast. In today's Vision Capitola presentation, I just wanted to remark that a lot of the comments in there were in regards to supporting the active and public transportation system that Capitola has a really good hold on. I mean, you guys have great bicycling and pedestrian facilities, especially that wonderful new curb bulb out for pedestrians so that they can be seen as cars are careening around Stockton into the Esplanade. And they were also identifying problems due to that automobiles tend to bring into the village, particularly traffic noise and parking constraints. And then the last item was on Vision Zero, that at the last Regional Transportation Commission, some of you are serving on that as well, that it was recently approved to fund the Community Traffic Safety Coalition's Vision's work plan for the next 2 years, or for the next year, and it will. One of the primary components is to develop a Vision Zero plan. Vision Zero is founded on the belief that all traffic injuries or severe traffic injuries and fatalities are preventable. And so I'm here to say that I want to work with the City of Capitola, its residents, and its businesses to help improve safety for all road users. Doesn't matter if you're in a car, a bicycle, walking, or skating, or whatever. It's like we want to improve the safety for all people. And I want to collaborate with all the locals here to help achieve those goals. I don't know how that's going to work out yet, but I just wanted to offer myself as a resource to help people get connected and improve safety. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Steve, have you seen the new bike lanes on 38th Avenue?
I haven't ridden there yet. I will
Okay.
when I go shopping at New Leaf.
Put it on your tour, okay?
I sure will.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to I rode that one block segment just south of the mall, and it was so nice.
Thank you for that. Anyone else like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period, move on to city council comments. Any council comments?
Yes, I have a few.
Termini.
First of all, next Thursday night, the Art and Wine Kickoff celebration at Bargetta Winery. It's a good time. Come one, come all. The art and cultural postcard will be mailed out probably in the next couple of weeks, so look for it. It's the usual refrigerator postcard, but twice as big because we do twice as much. And the print's bigger this year. Thank you very much. Last of all, our own Red Tree Shopping Center and one of our gateways to Capitola has just been repainted and re-landscaped. And it's actually the design and the effort is one of their project managers who actually lives in Capitola, Kim Hogan, and she did the landscaping and design and made it happen for Red Tree and just totally changed the look of the shopping center. It's beautiful.
Perfect. Any comments?
So, let's see, I attended the Central Coast Climate Collaborative organizing meeting. This is our second one. And joined a subcommittee dealing with coastal issues for low-lying communities. So a couple of things we identified would be of interest to Capitola, and hopefully we'll get some grants to work on that. Also attended the RTC meeting last week, and I certainly got an earful of all the different groups that have opinions one way or another about whether we should widen the highway, do a rail with or without a trail, on and on. And also attended another one called Decolonializing Our Minds, the aspect of how we think of third world countries. That was at Live Oak Grange. Also Focus Agriculture, very interesting program. UCSC and the Farm Project. I was around when Chadwick was here and heard a lot about it, but didn't go there when he was there. Went there when he was in Round Valley, I think. And also went through Big Tree Lumber, and I think I was mesmerized by the cutting of wood and generating of sawdust. Senior Council Advisory Meeting, we're working on a forum on senior issues. And then also I went to a recent Capitola Chamber of Commerce meeting. Hear George Tondero, speak, and I reminded him of the Capitola City Council's issue with the different percentages on the metro. Also, I saw Chief Rudy at the Behavioral Health Criminal Justice Collaboration. That was today, and I didn't recognize him at first. He was in a rather snazzy suit, and learned about some of the initiatives that. I think you're still wearing it. Okay, that Santa Cruz is working on. One is called CIT, which promotes and supports collaborative efforts to create and sustain more effective interactions among law enforcement, mental health care providers, and individuals with mental illness, their families, and communities. So we had several very interesting speakers, and it was noted by some that came from out of the area that Santa Cruz is really well noted for collaborative efforts between the multitude of organizations in this county that work on issues dealing with kids. This was mostly focused on kids and other areas, but this was mostly focused on kids. I went to that because I'm also part of the another effort of the Criminal Justice Council, which is the Youth Violence Prevention effort. So I thought this would give me a better understanding. Thanks. Oh, I forgot. This is the one I've been waiting to talk about, actually. So went to the dinner Monday of the California League of Cities, and that was very interesting. I think, Larry, you going to talk about what you learned about? Oh, okay. So the whole meeting was about different ways to pay for some of the benefits that we provide for our employers. After retirement was, I think, the main opportunity there. And I was very happy to hear that you and Jamie and your staff are working on ways to deal with this. What the league may provide is an opportunity. I don't know if that's one you're going to take advantage of. But the mayor of Watsonville, he had a few minutes ahead of time, and he started talking about all the great things that are going on in Watsonville. And then he mentioned his skate park. And I said, oh, my God, this is an opportunity. So I come up to afterwards, and I said, well, you know, we're going to have a skate park here in Capitola. And I said, well, why don't we have a friendly competition between Watsonville and Capitola? And he said, wow, that's a great idea. So there was at least two there that sort of thought it was a great idea. So we'll see what that leads to. I think it's a great way to, you know, get the kids involved and have a little competition between Watsonville and Capitola. So there.
Thanks, Sean. Stephanie?
I attended the Wharf Road Mobile Home Park annual homeowners meeting last night and just gave them an update on what we're working on with library. I encouraged them to get involved in our library plans when we start having some meetings to design and talk about the size, shape, and material and colors. Please come. I said, this is your backyard. This is in your neighborhood. And I gave them an update on the landscaping improvements at the Rispin Mansion. They were happy to hear about that. They have ongoing issues because there's no sidewalk on their side of the street. And so if they want to use the sidewalk, they have to cross the street, which is rather dangerous there, or walk down on the side where those little cones are, which isn't ideal either. But they're doing well. They put a clubhouse in. They took one of the spaces that there used to be a house there. And there was a couple that lived there, and I knew their daughter, and they were the managers, and then there was another little house. Anyway, there's space there. They put a little clubhouse there. And they're going to contract with First Alarm to start driving through the park at night, I'm not sure what hours, and tow any cars that are not in designated parking places, because they're having some problems with that. And they've been working with all the residents to follow the rules and don't have stuff out where it's not supposed to be, I guess. And they talked about guest parking, but they have a new management company. They were with Remy and had a horrible, horrible experience, apparently. And now they have a new company and a new manager who's fabulous, absolutely fabulous, a young woman. And so she's keeping them moving forward. And they said that, I said, how are you guys all doing? And they said, it's tough running a mobile home park. And I said, yes, it is. I said, if there's anything we can help with, let us know. But they seem like they're doing really well now. And they are happy that they bought the park, but they're finding out it's a challenge to do it. So anyway, that was really interesting. And I saw in the paper that the Soquel Cemetery is in financial problems and has defaulted on a number of financial loans or taxes or whatever. And it's for sale. So my first thought was, well, let's see if we can put a bid in for it now. They said opening bid is only $7,000, and I thought, well, we could come up with that. But $7,000 opening bid on, I think, June 15th or something. But they're apparently the temple is interested. That at the current arrangements, perhaps they weren't interested in taking on that debt. But now there's some default or some other, financial arrangements that might, if they could get rid of that debt, it might make it financially possible for them to buy it. So we'll see. It's going to go to the highest bidder. Could be somebody else. Who knows? I mean, it's a very complicated business to run. But I'll find out from the supervisor's office more details about what's going on there. And only because, a lot of Capitola people are buried there or are going to be buried there. And, it's sort of our cemetery, too. So we have this Friends of Soquel Cemetery group that's been meeting, and I'll keep you posted about that. But that's it's hopefully it'll go in the right direction, and we'll be able to help support it in whatever way we can. So looking forward to our meeting tonight. It's going to be interesting.
Okay. Dennis?
Well, since we're on the subject of mobile home parks, Pacific Cove is in the process right now of paving their roads all the way through that park. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for doing that. I mean, it's a big step toward.
Surf and sand.
Pardon me?
Surf and sand.
Surf and sand, excuse me, surf and sand. Pacific Cove.
Mr. Reed was correct.
We've already paved that one. Surf and sand.
Correct.
Yes, and the tenants are very happy.
I saw him up there today.
The council and the city has already previously addressed the transportation improvement plan, and we asked that it come back, and it's going to come back in June. And right now, the buckets are being readjusted, and some of our concerns are being addressed. So we'll see that package again to look at in June, late June.
Go ahead.
Can I just ask a question of Jamie or Rich? Is there a big movie sign going up right now on Capitola Road?
done.
It's up
It's replaced the old one. It's smaller than the old one.
on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Dennis had his way.
It's,
Nice, very nice.
so it
marquee.
is, it is smaller. I was just wondering the dimension.
It's a lot more attractive than the 1970s one that was there.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, that's all.
Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet, but
Okay,
that was the last remaining freestanding
We'll hold your
sign in the
comments
city
until you can
Capitola.
visualize it.
Okay,
I want you to
will
weigh
I was
in
kind
on
of
that.
surprised to see it because I didn't remember that we had authorized that. I thought we just gave them a sign on the building, but I didn't remember that.
We'll look at it.
Okay, it came up during the discussion.
The marquee.
Comments, I just want let everybody know that tonight I actually went, prior to coming to the meeting, went to Chili's for dinner tonight because tonight is Tip-a-Cop night for the city of Capitola. So you can go over there and you'll be served by a wonderful police officer who actually, the waitress made him make the guacamole at our table, so I was quite impressed with their skills.
Which officer?
He was from Santa Cruz. He wasn't one of ours, yeah. It's a joint effort between Santa Cruz, looked like Santa Cruz, maybe some sheriffs, and then Capitola, but is that correct? Yeah, thumbs up, yeah. So a lot of people there, looked like a good crowd, and they'll be doing that till 9 o'clock at night. So if this meeting gets done early, you can go, or if you're at home and this meeting is like a movie and you get the munchies, you can go there and get something to eat. So I encourage you to go support our local police. With that, we'll move on to boards, commissions, I'm sorry, city treasurer comments.
No comment.
Okay, and then over to staff comments.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a couple of staff comments tonight. First one is I just want to let you know that the agenda, the proposed agenda, draft agenda has been distributed. There's copies on your desk. It'll be going up on the website tomorrow. Our agenda hearing schedule begins next week, so the Finance Advisory Committee is going to be looking at the budget.
Yeah.
Thank you, the budget. Looking at the budget on Tuesday night, and we will have a special council meeting on Wednesday night to begin our budget hearing process.
Great.
And then I think Larry has an update on the opening at McGregor, and Steve will have some updates on CIP projects.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm really happy to get up here and tell you guys about two upcoming events. On June 4th at 11 a.m., we're going to have the grand opening dedication of the Monty Family Skate Park at McGregor. So there's progress. And the following Saturday at 10 a.m. is going to be the Aussies Memorial Dog Park.
You're saying this Saturday is the
So
skate park?
the Saturday, June 4th, is the skate park. Saturday, June 11th, is the dog they're going to have to learn to coexist, but we figure in mass it might be a better idea to have two.
I think that's a great idea.
What time did you say?
11 a.m. for the skate park on June 4th, 10 a.m. for the dog park on June 11th. So we'll hopefully see everyone out there.
We are,
See what we can do with Watsonville.
and unfortunately, the skate park opening does coincide with the car show, but I hope we can all just take a few minutes to step away from the car show for a few minutes and go over to McGregor and head on back and check out the cars in the Esplanade.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, John.
So I was out there looking at the cement pour and stuff like that, and I was informed by the contractors that apparently there's been a lot of practice going on.
Yeah, we've taken care of that.
There has been. We put up some additional signage. It's not ready to be skated yet. It's not safe yet. We have unfinished fencing around it, so please
Right.
don't head up there now. We have security guards up there until the evening right now, until we get it ready. Quick update on some of our other projects. As you all know, Stockton Avenue has been painted recently, so all the striping's done. We're just waiting for the installation of the street lights and to finish the last bus stop there. 38th, for all practical purposes, is done. I think there's a few cleanup items left, but it's been striped and gotten a lot of good feedback from that. Let's see, Rosedale, they poured the concrete valley gutter this week. They need to let that cure for a week, so we're looking probably the week, I think it's the 23rd, that they will be commencing with tearing up the pavement and putting new pavement in. Should go pretty quickly after that. Rispin ADA, we hope to break ground on Monday on that. Now, these two projects that were on the schedule, first is a Rispin Park and the pavement management plan for this year. Both those, the current estimates are well over their construction over our funding estimates. So I'm feverishly trying to figure out a phasing program for those or identify additional funding for those. I do anticipate Rispin Park going to bid in May and the pavement management project going out to bid in June. But, we're looking at significant, close to $1 million between the two of them being over budget. So I'm kind of just trying to figure out the best way to move forward with those.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Any questions?
No questions, but Steve, I don't know how many people have stopped me and said 38th looks great. So congratulations, that's good.
And, Mayor, we also have openings on the Historical Museum Board, and application date is, closure date is May 27th for the Museum Board.
Okay, is that the only opening we have is on the museum board?
And we also have an opening for a student on the Commission on Environment, ongoing.
Okay. All right, that'll take us on to reports from regional boards and commissions. Any regional boards or commissions to report on? And I just have one quick comment about, with regards to the Metro, and that is recently there was a vote at Cabrillo College among the students to impose a tax on all 12,000 students, full-time and part-time, and that passed by 53%, so there will be part of their tuition or fees per semester is that each person will buy a bus pass, and because of that, it'll generate close to $1 million, which will go back to the Metro system and help restore some of the routes that have been taken away or that plan to be taken away. And the agreement with the students is that if they were to pass that, the primarily routes that feed and supply them to Cabrillo will be the first routes to be restored. So I think that was a win-win for the students and Metro and other people that happen to ride any bus that goes through or around Cabrillo College. So that's all I have. That takes us to the consent calendar. These are items that we normally vote in one block. Is there anybody in the council like to pull anything from the consent calendar?
Move consent.
Second?
Is there anyone from the public that would like to pull an item on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, we do have the boards and committee appointments. You may want to take action on that before we get into the general government.
Okay, let's see. What, Sue, do you have committee appointments we need to make?
Yes, I do. This evening, if the council consider appointments to the Advisory Council to the Area Agency on Aging in Santa Cruz and San Benito counties, and also a appointment to the Capitola Architectural and Site Review Committee. As far as the Area on Aging, Councilmember Stephanie Harlan is the current alternate representative, and she's interested in becoming the primary representative, and we have received one application from Linda Pippin to be the alternate representative. And as far as the Architectural and Site Review Committee, there's a vacancy because of a resignation for a landscape architect, and we did receive one application, and it is in your packet, and I believe that is for Megan Bishop. And she attended yesterday's Arch and Site Review meeting and gave some real good positive input. And then also I want to let you know that Craig Waltz was the former landscape architect that resigned because of commitments, but he is interested in becoming the alternate landscape architect. And that concludes my report.
Stephanie, were you able to
I interviewed them both, and I'd like to wait on Ms. Pippin to attend. I want her to attend the first meeting to see if she likes the group, whether she wants to work with the group, whether she really thinks she can make it to the meetings. And so she's very interested. She's very qualified. But I think we should just wait and to appoint someone until they've gone to a meeting to make sure, because they may get there and then they don't like it.
There's
They're
a
not
point of
interested.
order. That is a mayor's appointment. We all have to vote on it, but it is a mayor's appointment to the Commission on the Aging. But the landscape architect is open to the entire council.
And I interviewed her, and she's wonderful. She seems wonderful.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely wonderful.
I'm fine with the agent,
Yeah.
Stephanie, you taking that primary position and having the alternate, and you will, why don't we hold off until next meeting for the, and you'll advise us on that after.
Yeah.
Or when is the next meeting for when will we be able to put her on if she attends the first meeting?
Well, there's no rush.
We'll check into the schedule and make sure it's after.
Whatever that
Meetings take
sequence
place.
is.
They meet next week. They meet on
Yes,
the 18th.
Okay.
22nd, I think.
Okay, so after she attends the meeting, we'll get some feedback from her, and then we'll bring it back and we can make that motion.
Yeah.
I'd like to move the landscape architect Megan Bishop to the Arc and Site Committee.
Oh, second. Did you second it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Based on, are you going to wait to attend the meeting, or you just want to?
No, I'm talking about the Arc and Site landscape architect now, not the Commission on the Aging.
Okay. And that's, I thought we just had, we were going to let her attend the meeting.
That's the Commission on the Aging.
Area agency on aging. His motion was about the landscape.
I was confused too, Ed.
Okay. Well,
Did I move too fast on there? I'm sorry.
Well, I thought Stephanie said
thought
she
Stephanie
wanted the
said
Arc
Arc
and
and
Site.
No, she already did yesterday.
She already did. That's what I thought she did, and
Yeah.
that's why I was confused. So Dennis, we're both confused. Okay, so there's a motion for the Arc and Site Committee, and a second? Jock, second. All in favor? Aye. Noes? None. Motion carries unanimously for Arc and Site, and we will wait on the aging until she goes to a meeting. Okay.
And then there's also a
And there's a-
desire for the alternate.
The alternate, my next motion, I don't want to make it too fast, but there's an alternate for the landscape architect, our former landscape architect. I would move he become the alternate.
Okay, great. I thought your motion included both, but, okay, go ahead.
Well, taking it slowly, one at a
That's
time.
fine. So it's a motion and a second? Second by Bertrand. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries unanimously for the regular person and the alternate. Got that, Sue? Okay. All right, with that, we'll move on to the general government public hearing, and our first item is a resident-initiated, this is the community visioning process. Mr. Gruneau.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm before you this evening just to provide a brief introduction to this item. As you recall, in January, you authorized staff to provide in-kind and technical support to the Vision Capitola effort, which was a community-initiated grassroots effort to find out what the community values about Capitola and what they'd like to see in the next 5 to 15 years. They held 2 very well-attended workshops in April over at the Jade Street Community Center. They recorded all the input they received, and tonight they are presenting their final report. And with that, I will introduce Gail Ortiz to present the outcomes.
Welcome, Gail.
Thank you. Good evening, council members, treasurer, staff. This is a great night since we're done. And we're really happy about being done. It was a lot of work, but I think all of us felt like we got exactly what we went into it out of it, and that was to get the community together to speak about what they care about Capitola, how they care about Capitola, what they care about, and to be listened to, speak and be heard. And building community is, there's precious few chances to build community these days, and these kinds of things are really, I think, really valuable, and I'm hoping everybody got a lot out of it. We want to thank the council and the staff, Rich especially, and the Recreation Department helped enormously. We really felt it was a team effort. The staff was always at our disposal. They were easy to work with. It was a pleasure. The whole thing was a pleasure. We feel like monetarily there was a give and take. We put in somewhere around $700 or $800 of our own money. And folks probably put in that much or more. I don't know whether you quantified it or not, but it was a really good private-public partnership that I think is a good role model for future events such as this, although not by us. We had some, well, I also want to thank the volunteers. We had 30 people come forward to volunteer for this. And in my experience, getting volunteers, 30 is a pretty good number. And everybody did exactly what they were supposed to do. Motivated, wonderful group of people. So let me give you a few numbers here. I know you have them in front of you, but just for people who are watching at home. From the city's website, we have about 9,918 people living here in Capitola, residents in Capitola. We had 220 people total attend the workshops, 121 who spoke at the first workshop, both workshops. 102 comment cards were filled out at the first workshop, and 101 comment cards were received via email, which is really important to note in that we feel like it's a very good way in the future for the city to consider communicating to its community, and vice versa, is through our website. I think there's a lot of opportunity there that we could avail ourselves of. So there were a total of 354 people who participated in this event, and if you take the 9,918 918. That's about 3.6% of our population, which is a pretty good number for this kind of thing. So we feel very gratified about that. We wanted to let people know that they can see this report on www.visioncapitola.com. It's under reports. It's a lengthy report. You folks have it. I'm sure City Hall could provide one for people if they wanted to see it. I wanted to just read the top 10. What do you want to see happen in the next 5 to 15 years in Capitola? Some of them surprising, most of them not. I think we found that just about everything fit in very nicely with our general plan. And we made a point of letting people know that and showing them the goals of the general plan so that they understand that document and they understand that that document reflects their values. And encourage them at the end of the 2 meetings to go online, read the general plan, get involved. Sue, we're sorry, but we told them to ask for agendas emailed to them, so you might be getting a few requests for that. So to get people involved more. So the top 10 major categories that people were interested in Capitola, the things that they think they want everybody to focus on, and starting from the top and working down 1 to 10, Capitola Village, traffic and circulation, Capitola Mall, city infrastructure, city parks, city services, neighborhood integrity, environment, parking, and library. And those are very general, but the report also breaks those down in all the top 10 comments, and it's we did it the best way we could. There might be some there might be a lot of data here to wade through, but I'm open to any questions you might have. I know Nels Westman and Susan Westman, who really were my partners in this, helped me tremendously. Nels has a few words to say, so maybe we could have Nels speak first, and then we could all 3 of us are open to answer questions for you. Is that okay?
However you want to present it, Gail, that's fine.
Thanks, Gail. Good evening. We learned a lot from this low-budget, all-volunteer grassroots project, and one was our willingness to shut up and listen was really appreciated by the community. Another was the community valued the opportunity to gather together and share their values and ideas about the future of their city. Many said to us afterwards, please do this more often. Paradoxically, one of the things we also learned is that when you conduct a wide-open process like this, you are going to get a great deal of unfiltered, wildly diverse input. The result was that you didn't necessarily get large numbers of hits on one particular subject. Rather, the importance of the results are the general trends that become apparent in an open process like this. Another thing that became apparent was that a large meeting emphasizing spoken comments was sort of a constraint. Each speaker only got 2 minutes to speak, plus our comment cards had limited amount of space to write. As a result, the input from these meetings was understandably brief and perhaps slightly limiting. On the other hand, the comments that we received via our website tended to be much more comprehensive and better organized. People had the time and the comfort level of not speaking in front of 180 people, which resulted in, I think, better comments. Or should I say more valid comments. I would urge the city to find better tools and techniques to significantly expand their online outreach and interaction with its citizens. Thank you.
Any questions? I have one. I was there on the first night, and I was trying to follow the process. I know you were trying really hard. There was a couple people that were not Capitola residents and were not allowed to speak.
We tried.
No, I'm acknowledging that, and that was good. So, but they weren't spoken. But were they allowed to turn in cards, or they?
Up to every single card, online and in person, had the person's name and their neighborhood.
Okay.
So if people wanted to fib and tell us that they were from a certain neighborhood and they weren't, we didn't check IDs.
Yeah.
But nor did we take any information, email information, or any other information from people. So we don't have a way of getting back to people. We purposely did that. Yeah. So to our knowledge, every single person who commented and spoke, both written and verbal, was from Capitola.
Right. I just want to acknowledge Steve Piercy was there, and he's an advocate for bicycles, which we all love, but he was not allowed to speak. And You probably being who he is, he wouldn't sneak in a cart anyway, but we do appreciate in Capitola your efforts for bicycles, Steve, so I took no offense. Okay, good.
This is your show.
Okay, and I appreciated the fact that you were trying, at least with your, your guidelines, to make it a Capitola function.
Yeah.
And thanks for your patience on that one, Steve.
I just wanted to listen to what was going on within Capitola, so I was really grateful for Dale and the volunteers who were organizing this, so that I could get their perspective. It was very enlightening.
Well, thanks for attempting to make it purely Capitola.
Yeah, thank you.
I know that was hard to do, so, yeah. Any other questions? Doc?
So, you talk about community engagement, and you also mentioned that it's really hard to do things like this. So I would like to see other efforts, definitely. But I was wondering if you'd comment about something, sort of in line with what I just said. Is that me? Oh, Jesus.
Want to get that?
Just perfect timing, So, we've gone from New Brighton, which was, a great experience, and that sort of was the genesis for this. And now this has had two meetings. And so a lot of people asked me about it, and I said, to me, the best thing is that we did it. And now when you walk down the street, and I think I've commented about this, you'll see people that were there, and you will wish you had been there.
The thing about it for me was how few people I knew, and how many people I didn't know came up to me afterwards and introduced themselves, and they would say things like, I've lived here practically all my life, or they'd say, I've lived here for 3 years. We bought a house here 40 years ago, and we just moved here. We retired here. There were, all kinds of different people living here for all kinds of different times for different reasons, and a lot of them none of us knew, which was so great. It wasn't what we call the usual suspects. It was some of us, but, there were a lot of people that came out of the neighborhoods for that. So as you can see, I think, Susan, are you going to talk about the map at all, or you want to talk? Nelson's going to. I don't know whether people at home can see this map, but, there's certain areas that were really well represented. And others that we wish had been a little bit more. So maybe next time, Mike was asking me today, we want to do this again. How often should we do this every year? I think every year is a little bit much, but I think, maybe every 5 years, check in with our community and, see how they're feeling. But also online would be great. And the other thing I want to mention is things that scored low. Some of them were surprising, and one of them for me was the wharf, and it really indicates to me that more education needs to happen, because when I mentioned the wharf at the end of the second, which I promised myself I wouldn't lead people, but I did it anyway because I think the wharf is too important not to, they didn't really know anything about the wharf except that they absolutely loved it. You could just see everybody's face light up when I said something about the wharf, and they were raising their hands and they were excited. So it's not for the wharf didn't score low for lack of caring about the wharf. It's just that I don't think people they just assume it's always going to be there. So we need to educate before we ask for money to keep that wharf, that precious resource that we've got, alive.
Gail, don't feel bad about no votes for the wharf, because I also noticed there was no comments about jet noise. And that's a pretty big deal for a lot of people in town. So I think sometimes they just didn't visualize it or at the meeting. So, but I would love if you stuck around for the next item. Okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, John.
Dennis, I think, and then me.
How nice of you, Dennis.
Well, first I want to thank all of you for putting that together. What a great event. And community input it's not easy to get that many people into one room on a Saturday. It's a feat in itself. And I learned a lot from this. I look back through here, and it substantiated a lot of things that I'm preaching for years. One of them is the idea of getting cars out of the village. That seemed to have some real strong feeling within the community, and I didn't know it was there. I really honestly didn't. Closed highway days, closed road days, and we did that, and I really never had any feedback of how successful that was. And so I learned a lot from this. The other thing that I saw here is that the city's doing a good job right now. 90% of the things that you have in this document, the city's either in process of doing or doing right now. It doesn't mean that we're doing them all perfectly right, but it does mean that we are working towards substantiating the major concerns of the people in this village, or not village, but the whole town. So I give it to staff, and I give it to the community, and I give it to this council for some good leadership. And yes, we have a lot to learn, and this document was great for all of us. Thank you very much for doing it.
I think that you could say that overall, people are very content, very happy living in Capitola. Yeah, good job.
Yeah, one thing I was particularly happy about was the response of the participants in terms of how happy they are with our police department. I thought that was exceptional. You don't often get that kind of response. You know, it's more adversarial, or, you know, I just got pulled over, you know, something like that. But the fact that it was so positive was very encouraging. And this conference that I went to today, which Rudy helped put on or was part of in one way or the other, one of the major speakers talked about how the law enforcement is a reflection of our community. It was a statement. I felt so good about it, I had to write it down. So I'd just like to say that there's other aspects of our community that reflect our community, and that's our staff, and that's the people that work in the parks, clean the streets, and do the other things that keep this town beautiful. And with that in mind, I think when you see someone walk down the street, when you see someone walk the Esplanade, you know, badge because he's in our police department, talk to that person and tell that person what you feel about this community, the things that are important to you. And that will be reflected in our police department. And that will be reflected in the people that work for this city.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, great call, Jacques.
Councilman Sherman?
Thank you. This was great. And despite what you think, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a yearly Vision Capitola Day. Anytime we get 200 people in the same room from the community and out of their houses and talking face to face, that's a good day. Positive.
I have to say, I think the reason we got so many people out is because we hand-delivered 5,000.
Right. Yes.
Which was the biggest, I think, one of the biggest parts, one of the biggest efforts in this whole thing.
Absolutely true. I think the information is terrific, like everyone said, and it's not only a primer for future people who want to run for office, but existing elected officials and appointees can take this and look at it, and they're the ideals that we hold dear in here, and we all do. And the downside is that sometimes after you're elected, and you, as you know, Gail, and you're up here for a couple of years, this is still in your heart, but it's eclipsed by the machinery of government.
Yes.
And we get bogged down in it, and we lose sight. And it's great, you know, opening this up before every meeting, saying, okay, this is what we do. So thank you. I love it, and it's great information. It's a great tool. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for allowing us to do it and for supporting us. We appreciate it.
I'd like to know, by the way, I was going to request from the mayor, as kind of part of this is, and we spoke already about reactivating the technology committee, which helps the technological pipeline to the citizens and making it easier for communicating, for posting information, for getting feedback. And I'd ask Tony, I know that the city of Santa Cruz, during their city council meetings, receive live emails from people viewing the meeting in their homes. And I'd like to know in the future, I'm not putting you on the spot, at some point in time, being able to institute that, because more and more people are watching our hit show from home and online, and it would be good to be able to get feedback, just like a podium appearance, via email through the city clerk, read into the record. That's a totally doable thing, correct?
It is doable, and the way it's done specifically, I think one or two council members may still rely on a printed out copy of the agenda, although most have an electronic device at the dais. But in that case, the city clerk receives all of those communications at a single address and then has a printer at the dais and prints out copies and distributes them during the course of the meeting.
And that can be something we can discuss in the technology committee, but something for this council to consider, having regular meetings and starting to make our outreach more robust, and also our education, because I realize a lot of citizens don't really understand what we have control over and what we don't have control over.
That was frustrating.
And it's fascinating and frustrating at the same time. and yet I'm sure you didn't want to turn it into a make-wrong lesson
Yeah,
or,
we did. Yeah,
or
our whole point
class.
is not to comment on anyone's comments. So
Right.
we,
So well done, and it opened my eyes on a few things. I appreciate it.
I think the technology idea is great. However, the Ron Graves walking in the room after hearing something that upset him and then walking over here, the impact of that, you can't replace that. But I mean, I'm all for the new technology.
Oh, Ron's not going to email us. Trust me.
No, I'm just saying.
Neither is Greg Tedesco.
Neither is Greg Tedesco.
Stephanie, you had a comment.
I got a call from a resident today who wanted to know if they could still participate. And I said, you can send us an email, a letter, card, call us anytime about anything. So they just wanted to make sure that they still have input on this. I see the report's finished, but comments are welcome anytime. So if we run into people that couldn't participate or didn't or feel bad about it now, encourage them to still send in comments about what they like in Capitola and where they'd like to see us go in the future. Look in your crystal ball. What do you see?
Yeah, we had a cutoff, day. We went 2 days beyond it, and we were still getting, all these responses. And we finally had to take down that part of the website because we would still be getting comments. I'm sure of it.
Thank you all. It was a great effort.
Thank you
Okay,
very, very
there's
much.
no action required here. We just accept the presentation. Thank you very much for your hard work and all that. Oh, Molly, come on up. There has to be a closing comment.
Not necessarily me closing, but I just wanted to say I'm Molly Ording. I'm the new chairman of the Parking and Traffic Commission, and I just want you to know that it certainly didn't escape my or our attention that 2 of the top 10 items that were discussed were traffic, primarily in the village, and parking. And we would certainly welcome lots of your input for future directions to really address this, really take this on, because it is an ongoing problem, and we'd like to really solve some of these things. So let us know.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks.
And before, I just want to open it up to the public. Anybody else in the public like to comment on anything we've discussed with Vision Capitola? Steve.
Hi, my name is Steve Piercy, SoCal again. I just checked that the City of Capitola and the County Board of Supervisors are both using Excella for posting their minutes and agendas. The county allows you to add comments, but I don't think the City of Capitola has that feature enabled. So I suggest you all look into that so that you can receive comments through the website through the City of Capitola. And then, secondly, I'd love to help. So anything that I can do to help support and mitigate the problems that are associated with driving cars through the village, I can connect people with resources to help make that happen.
Thanks, Steve, and we'll work on your honorary residency, okay?
No, we're going to have to get you an apartment here or a house or something.
I'm looking for a retirement home, so maybe in another decade I'll be up here.
Okay, we'll close that and move on to our next item, our last item. This is a receiver report regarding the wharf financing plan and options. And that will be?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I was going to be giving the presentation this evening. I know that the item came directly from the Public Works Department, but really what we're going to be talking about is financing issues, which I thought more appropriate for me to present. So as background, last month we received a report, an extensive report regarding the condition of the wharf, which outlines some of the sort of immediate maintenance and operations needs for the wharf. I'm going to summarize a relatively in-depth presentation you received 2 weeks ago in about 3 seconds. Is generally fair to good, but there are needs. And the costs that were outlined to improve the resiliency and maintain the wharf were in the range of $200 to $4 million. So then at that council meeting, council directed staff to look at sort of a 10-year plan for the wharf and identify costs that would include both sort of the maintenance and O&M, as well as strategic investments to make the wharf function better and improve its resiliency, and then also to look at the structures at the end of the wharf to see if they could be remodeled, reoriented to function better. So we authorized a small contract amendment with our engineers to do that work, and council at that same meeting also asked staff, city manager, to return with a plan to finance that 10-year plan. Now, the wharf plan hasn't yet been developed, but staff anticipates that the cost range for that is going to be in the $5 to $10 million range. And due to the timing of the election cycle, I wanted to come back before you relatively quickly to present some options for your consideration about financing some of those improvements down the road. There are a number of options that I'm going to touch on. The first one is a Measure D extension. As you're aware, the city has a 1/4-cent sales tax on all sales within the city. That's due to expire in the end of 2017, so about 18 months from now. That generates about $1.1 million a year. And as a general tax, so if we don't do anything, it goes away in 18 months. And as a general tax, if you were to consider extending it, you have to place it on a ballot that has a general election and includes the election of city council members. So this November would be the opportunity to extend it if your council wished to do that. You could extend the measure to help finance wharf improvements or some of the other priorities that were identified in the Vision Capitola report you just received, or potentially in the general plan. In addition, you'll recall that we have a library measure coming up here regionally, which is a very important priority for the city and a commitment that we've made. And if the library measure were to not pass, that again could be a priority for a Measure D extension. Other options to consider could be a TOT rate change. Doesn't generate as much money. Each 1% generates about $130,000 a year. The TOT increase on its own probably wouldn't generate sufficient revenue for the wharf project, let alone those other priorities. And as you'll recall, voters did decline and increase the TOT in 2014, which was a relatively challenging election, so I'm not sure whether or not we want to put that back on the ballot. Enterprise district. Very often, municipal wharfs are operated as enterprise funds by city. What that basically means is that they're sort of isolate the revenue and expenditures from the rest of the city operation, and they tend to operate revenue neutral. So how that would work functionally at the wharf would be essentially generating increased lease payments to cover the entire cost of the wharf. The challenge is that with the structures we already have out there, we already know what rent we get, and it doesn't cover what we need. So really what we have to be talking about is additional development on the wharf. The wharf is in the National Marine Sanctuary, as well as regulated by the Coastal Commission. Staff anticipates that additional commercial activity on the wharf would probably be challenging to permit through those entities. And we also anticipate that there's probably conflicting perspectives about value of having additional activity or structures at the end of the wharf. And lastly, as Molly mentioned, parking is always an issue, and parking around the wharf in particular is a bit of a challenge because it's not very close to any municipal lots. Another option that's been discussed is grant or funding by somebody else, which sounds like a great option. And I think grant funding ultimately can be an important component of any wharf project, but grant funding for ongoing maintenance and repair is relatively difficult to obtain. Grants tend to be for specific projects, and they're competitive, and they usually require a chunk of local money to match the grant funding. So it appears to staff that a pure grant-based funding plan to fund the wharf is probably infeasible, but it should be included in sort of the overall big picture that if we're looking for a $7 million project at the end of the day, we should expect and try to get at least, $2, $3, $4 million in grant funding to help out with that. So what I'm recommending this evening would be to authorize staff to enter into a contract of $13,000 with Bregman and Associates to test voter interest in extending Measure D for the wharf plan or for other priorities. We could gather information about what kind of projects the community would like to support, and then the council could weigh that information along with the information in the general plan and the Vision Capitola document, seeing where the library measure ends up, and make a decision about whether or not an extension would be warranted. In addition, I think that another key point is what term of an extension would we be interested in? Would voters approve something 4 years, 6 years, and understanding where voter opinions were about that. And the intent would be to do the polling, although you'd be authorizing it tonight, the intent would be to do the polling after the results from the library measure are known, which would be after June 8th. So staff's recommendation is to approve the contract this evening, and what that would mean then is we would be developing the poll questions over the next couple of weeks, doing the polling shortly after the library results are known, and then returning to council at our last budget hearing, which is June 16th, with those results. The challenge, of course, is that even though we would have all of July and all of all of July, and the first meeting in August normally to make a decision is we only have one regular meeting at this point scheduled in there. So we may want to talk about on June 16th, depending on what the council is interested in, is scheduling a potential workshop or some other mechanism to gain more input and try and hone the result to figure out what we want to do. Alternatively, on June 16th, you could look at the results and decide you want to sit this election out and not put the extension on. So with that, staff is available for questions.
Any questions?
So you're saying June 16th, Jamie, just because we'll be after the primary elections, and people will have a clear head about taxing issues, and that we would know whether the library actually went forward. And so to make it clear in my mind is that, say the library measure does not go forward, what we would do is actually propose something where we would do a split between the wharf and the library and from that funding? Is that?
I mean, I think that that's certainly an option that would be on the table. My suggestion would be to, on June 16th, when you see the polling results, look at where voter support might lie and try to understand, is the wharf and the library the two top priorities? Would it be library and neighborhood streets? I would hate to speculate about where the poll results came out, but my suggestion would be, yes, on June 16th, you could see sort of what different kinds of combinations of projects might potentially be supported and for what term voters might consider an extension to support them. Understanding that obviously the library, at this point, we have $2.7 million set aside, and it's going to need a fair chunk of change just to get the thing off the ground.
And what is our deadline to get an initiative on the ballot?
So the deadline to put something on the ballot is August 12th. Which is a Friday there. And normally August 11th would be a council meeting, but we've rearranged our council schedule this year to go dark that first meeting in August. So we may, at the end of the day, want to schedule that first meeting in August, that normal second Thursday date. But I'm thinking that we would wait until June 16th, see the results, and then council could talk about whether you wanted to have a specific workshop or schedule over one of those dark dates that we were anticipating.
Isn't it not true that if we had a funding mechanism that's coming from the city itself, that we actually opens the door for going outside for grant funding?
Absolutely. I think that was one of the points that I was trying to make about the grants, is that my expectation is, and I can't guarantee it, but my expectation is if we had funding for wharf projects and we're able to develop specific wharf plans and had match funding, we could put out grant applications. And I believe we would have success at that for specific projects.
The Coastal Conservancy already has their name on this wharf, right at the entrance there. Maybe we can get them. The thing you take into consideration is this is a port of safe refuge, that pier is. Meaning that somebody's having trouble at sea, it's a place where you can bring people at sea. The other thing that I think is important is our community as well, the identity of the wharf with our community. But looking at the wharf is the only place that someone gets off of the beach or over water in their whole life is on that wharf. So having people having access to the ocean is certainly something that our Coastal Commission should be biting on, as well as the Monterey Bay Sanctuary and the Department of Fish and Game. It just seems to me we have a strong pull of something that's pretty valuable to everyone out there, that if we can get some funding, that we can certainly reach out to other agencies. A $10 million price tag over 10 years doesn't seem like a big amount to me, particularly if we own the buildings out there, so we have to rebuild them at some point. It isn't we ask somebody else to do it. There are buildings that we're responsible to either take them out or we rebuild them, and they're that point in age now where it should have been done 5 or 10 years ago now. So it's a point in time where we have to find some way to budget those buildings and the structure itself.
Let me open it up to the public, Dennis, and we'll bring it back and discuss it, okay? Is there anybody from the public that would like to weigh in on this possibility to go out for balloting for a potential wharf improvement? Comments? None? Okay, we'll bring it back. Who wants to? Go ahead.
I'll start. First, with regard to the enterprise, and I understand expansion of our wharf for an enterprise fund is significantly different than physically expanding our wharf for structural purposes. And we learned that at our last council meeting. A slight increase in width in the beginning of the wharf would add tremendous structure and integrity to how it weathers the storms. Some would say, and it's it's interesting that Vision Capitola comes to us the same night that we talk about polling, because some would think that, this binder is the perfect poll. And in qualitative analysis, this is the perfect poll. But with regard to ballot measures and raising funds and, taking the pulse of the electorate, no one does it better than Gene Bregman. I've seen him say, go for it, and the ballot measures work, and I've seen him say, please don't do this, and people don't listen to him, and they fail. So I have a lot of faith in what he can do. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of going to this poll. It's inexpensive. I like the way it's cross-tabbed and the way we get some analysis that I never thought of, just by the way the questions are fashioned. And it's just good information. And I'm not talking about poll questions like, are you happy living in Capitola? We know the people in Capitola living here are happy living in Capitola. Those aren't the questions we need. We need to know what's significant, what they're ready to, put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, with the things we need to make better. The wharf is my favorite thing to talk about. Dennis and I are both in the wharf committee. It's one of those places where, not unlike the boardwalk in Santa Cruz, citizens of Capitola could spend 10 years never walk on the wharf. But just mention it going away, and it's just like, not, no way, no how. It's iconic to Capitola, and if we don't repair it, we will lose it. And what people don't realize is, if the wharf is damaged beyond repair, we may not have the ability from the Coastal Commission and the Conservancy to ever rebuild it. If that wharf comes completely down, we may be told we cannot rebuild it. So it will stop being our choice. While it's there, we need to make it our choice. So I would move that the council approve this poll.
Second.
Comments?
Yeah, I definitely feel the way Mike does, and I think definitely Dennis, and I'll wait to other comments, but I'm sure they're all in the same vein. But I think the wharf is like a lot of things in our life. We don't appreciate it until they're gone. We just sort of assume it's always there, and we go about our lives, and then it's taken away, and then a big chunk of this city, if that wharf was damaged and had to be taken down or was destroyed beyond repair, it would just change the nature of our city considerably. Just think of all the pictures that we have of Capitola. It often includes the wharf. It's a major feature. So I think I actually would like to see the wharf used more in terms of city activities. I think there's a tremendous amount of things that we could do that would integrate the wharf into our city a little bit more, get the appreciation of that so that, we have that resource, that, ability to pay for things when we actually have to do things there. But I think in the long run, the wharf can actually add a lot more to the city. And I'm not sure what it would be. I'm not saying what it would be. But I'd like to include people in the city in that effort. I'd like to see an open effort to get people involved in considering what the wharf should be or could be, what it could be. There's a whole number of things. I'll give you an example. I grew up in San Francisco, and I'm a fourth-generation San Franciscan, very proud of San Francisco. And if you're from San Francisco, some of the major features you all focus on are like the Golden Gate Bridge. My dad talked to me about how he went across there, he watched it being built, and first day, the whole thing. And no one ever thought of the Oakland Bay Bridge. No one. This is the bridge to where? Oakland. And then some guy came up with this brilliant idea to put lights on the Oakland Bay Bridge that were run by a computer, and you could do all these fantastic designs. You guys have ever seen it. It's just wonderful. And people just go up to the city, actually, just to see those lights. It's amazing. They actually existed in the past, and so it was reviving this thing. It changed how people thought about the Oakland Bay Bridge. Big way. So I think there's a lot of things that we could actually do and take advantage of because we have a wonderful resource in the Capitola Wharf.
Well, there's no doubt about it that everybody loves the wharf. And I had office hours out there one year when I was mayor, and people did come out. they did come out. They did not a lot, but it was an effort just to get people out there, as Jacques said, to have some activities. I'm a little nervous about going to the voters to ask for money unless we really have a need, unless we can really show that we've used all of our other money very wisely, very carefully, and we have plans for any remainder that we have that's unspent of all our capital improvement projects. So if we can put together a scenario of real need, then we can all get behind, that we can get the Vision Capitola people behind, we can get the library people behind. If the library measure doesn't pass, then I'm all there. But otherwise, I'm a little nervous about even talking about going to the voters in November. But I understand the need for it if we want to extend this tax, because that's the time to do it. So I think we just have to be really careful, and it's only a $12 million budget, and we have to be careful. We're looking at repairs, and in the past we've patched it together with a couple $100,000 here and a couple $100,000 there, and but to talk about a 10-year plan with $1 million a year, and so forth, like that's a lot of money for us. We've never really put any substantial money into a project except for CIP. Everything else, it's not that much discretionary money. So if we got this new money, we'd have to really be careful, I think, that we're really meeting the needs that have been identified tonight. One of them is certainly the wharf, but I don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. So I'd love to have a $1 trillion wharf, but we can't afford that. So we're going to have to be modest, I think, in all this. So I'm just being fiscally conservative and cautious, and I'll go along with the poll. $13,000 is a lot. I mean, to get, to sample 400 callers, of course, you're going to have to call a whole lot because most people don't answer. They leave a message. So it is a lot of work. But good polling data is invaluable, as Mike said. It's absolutely crucial and absolutely invaluable. I think we just need to handle this very carefully, and I'll put in a pitch for newsletters 4 times a year to educate our public about everything. I mean, there's always stuff that comes up, and and then this like this, and we talk about it. Well, people don't have the education. Well, if we had a newsletter more often, we could educate our residents more. And I really am going to make a pitch during the budget study session for that, because this is an example. If we had articles in there about the wharf and showing the disrepair, or showing this, or whatever, just news about what's going on in town, people know more about what's going on. And I think that'll serve us well when things like this come up, and we want to go to the voters and say, well, we have this little problem here, and we like to do this, or whatever, pictures from when the village was closed and what everybody having such a good time. Have an article about that, and to show people what it's like, to get them excited about it. But it's just public education. So I really think a newsletter more often would help us in every way. So I'll reluctantly support Mr. Brigman's proposal, and reluctantly support this because if the library measure does not pass, then we're going to be scrambling, and we're going to have to borrow money. And how are we going to pay it back? This kind of a vehicle is the perfect way to do it. So onward and upward for the library.
Yeah.
Dennis?
I've said my piece, thank you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Treasurer has a comment.
Treasurer, go ahead.
So I think my job is to just give my opinion on how we spend our money.
Okay.
And so I remember we did this study, and we spent a sizable amount of money doing the polling about TOT. And then when TOT came out, it was as though nobody remembered anything, as though they hadn't been educated enough. So I'm just going to ask, if we're going to spend $13,000, we need to continue with the education by putting out a newsletter and saying, hey, these were the results to the person that called you on the telephone. We're doing this because for this. So I just think we need to spend the $13,000 wisely and get the objective fulfilled with that, by educating the public.
I think those are great comments, and I appreciate that for the financial position. It kind of goes along with a little bit of what I was going to say, is that we all know that we suffered badly in the last TOT ballot that came back, I believe, in 80% that it would pass. And what makes a measure fail is not necessarily the polling, but the opposition against it. So my concern, especially with There's probably most likely going to be an RTC tax measure on. We don't know how the library is going to fare. And, you know, I go back to Vision Capitola because I think it was a great thing, but Gail, you brought up a fabulous point. The wharf didn't even make the list, and when I look at item number 10, it's the library. And if I were to sit here right now and say what are the two most important things that we got working in this town, it's the library and the wharf. You know, we believe right now that we've got this effort that's going to fund the library, and we're all going to have smiles on our face in another month or so. And Dennis and Mike, you know this better than anybody, we continually try to find $100,000, $200,000 to fix this wharf. And, you know, when the wharf gets broken, it becomes vulnerable, and that's what this presentation was about. And we just saw that part of the Ventura wharf went down this last El Nino. And once it starts losing the pylons, it becomes vulnerable, and then that's when the money really starts adding up. So, you know, this is one of those things where, like, you know, you turn around, and this is, you know, this not being here in Capitola would definitely affect, when people tell me they love our quaint, wonderful little town, I know that's a big part of it. So, you know, I'm a little hesitant like you are, Stephanie, you know, but you encourage me because you said you like it when the council votes 5-0, so now that you're in, I'm feeling inspired to support this. So, it's I think it's a great thing. I hope the polling comes back. I hope Vision Capitola is on board with the wharf. I mean, that would be part of what I would like to hope, because I think that truly, if this town is behind anything, it succeeds. I mean, we were here 4 years ago with Measure O, and it passed. And I think the good thing about Measure O is we've all done our job. The treasurer, that half of Measure O was to bring our reserves up, and we've done that. And, you know, we've got all these projects we just got done doing, 38th Avenue, and I think I could bring Steve up, but aren't we sending out $1 million bid for paving for master plan? So, you know, I want to say that Capitola should have confidence in where the money's going. I think that it's important that Stephanie says we have to have a good plan about where it's actually going to go so people know this is where the money's going to go, and I think that's our challenge. But, yeah.
Well, I just want to know what kind of questions he would be asking on what topics and so forth. I'd like to review that maybe.
Well, if I might say, because I've been through about 18 Bregman polls in the last 3 years on the different commissions, I think giving direction to the city manager regarding where we want the poll to question in general, the wharf, the library, what's the temperature of the voters with regard to extending this tax measure, and a little bit of education. Talking about actual questions in public, making the poll questions public, taints the poll. It makes it no longer scientific. So we need to be very cautious about that, and be it in general, give direction to the city manager so that the people who do this the best can fashion the questions the right way. I know it's a little counterintuitive, but I might, with regard to fiscal responsibility, nothing says fiscal responsibility like not wasting $200,000 a year fixing the wharf one piling at a time. If we do real work to that wharf, we won't have these emergency $100,000 for 2 pilings projects that we seem to do every single year. That's a waste of taxpayer money.
Do we want him to ask about anything else is my question.
That's,
I mean, I don't want to be so narrow. Yeah.
If that's the case, then, you know, make that known to the city manager, and the poll will get flushed out.
But do we want to ask about anything else other than the wharf of the library?
Right. Before I call for the vote, Mr. City Manager, why don't you give us a little direction on how you envision the questions going?
So the two, I think Councilmember Termini summed it up pretty well. Is the notion of trying to really let the Gene do his thing and develop the questions. I think where I was coming from was looking at the wharf, the library. Obviously, the library doesn't become part of the poll if the measure passes, but developing questions around those two. And then some of the other priorities that are called out in the Vision Capitola document. There's a lot of conversation about neighborhood streets, I want to say traffic calming.
Well, sidewalks. I mean, we could add something like sidewalks, which,
right.
People get mad when they have to pay for it themselves. But we could use money. We could have some money for that.
So those were the kind of, I'm trying to operate from recollection, but some of the top 10 kind of things that bubbled up. So the wharf, the library, and some of the things that are called out in the top 10, that would be, city type functions were what I was thinking. And then the other key, and I mentioned it earlier, is trying to understand where voter sentiment would be, if it was a 4-year extension. if it was a 6-year extension, those sorts of things, and see where voter approval, if there are any cutoffs, testing those kinds of things. And I would really kind of give this basic outline to Gene and then let him develop the questions to make sure he was asking them in a way that was going to get us the best, most scientific results.
And is he going to explain, are they going to explain to the people that they call that the majority of this money comes from non-Capitolans?
Yeah, so there's going to be...
That's important to tell people.
So one of the basic sort of notions, the way these polls work is there'll be, you ask the questions, then you'll give some education about it. You say, well, the wharf, currently is 60 years old and requires daily maintenance, and identifies and then you retest once you've given more information. And then in addition, you often want to retest after you read sort of an argument against and an argument for. And so, the argument for would obviously be that 75% of our taxes are generated by non-Capitola residents. It's an existing tax, so it's not a tax increase. This doesn't change your taxes. This is just continuing with status quo. And the argument against, you can imagine the kinds of points that would be brought up in it.
Well, I'm just saying this is an opportunity if we want to ask about any other topic, like sidewalks or something like that.
I think that's what's covered here in city infrastructure. That was item 4 on the vision.
But that's nebulous to residents when you're calling them. If you're going to name a couple of other things, might catch their interest, and they might say, yeah, I like that. We need that. And yeah, I'd support it if it was that.
Well, I think we should let him bring us back.
But he doesn't know. Does he know what our needs are and what
Well, like I said, I would be using some of the priorities that were identified in the Vision Capitola document. I'd be talking about the wharf and the library, and I think those would be kind of the key areas I'd focus on. And I'm saying Vision Capitola because I think it jives pretty well with a lot of the general plan goals about maintaining the roads, promoting alternative transportation that includes ped, bike, traffic calming, those kinds of things. And try to get as much feedback as I can to the council so you guys can make a good decision about what blend of projects would make the most sense and be the most likely to pass.
Can they ask an open-ended question like, if there are extra money generated from this, what would you like to see it used for? I mean, to give them the opportunity to answer that?
I'm happy to do that, although I think it becomes difficult to sort of, for you as a council to digest. I think that's a little bit more what the Vision Capitola process was. It becomes a little bit difficult to process sometimes.
Make a list. Just make a list of it.
I think it's better that we don't put too many questions on there. I think if let him do what he does and come back. I think we're committing right now to primarily, my understanding is this is wharf-based and it's city infrastructure-based, which is roads and sidewalks.
Wait. I'm not even sure we want to go there. And remember, we have a tax measure that's coming up from the RTC that actually covers that. Roads and sidewalks, they're already voting, they're already asking people to vote for a tax measure for that.
Right.
So adding that into this one doesn't really, it's not good timing.
The county's going to be very mad if we talk about roads when it'll compete with their measure.
Yeah.
They really don't want us to do that. But that's why I said if we're specific, like something like sidewalks, that I think people would support that, but not roads and not general infrastructure. I mean, general stuff doesn't catch people's attention. I think if we have something specific that we can either few other things we can give them as things that we'd like to work on, or that they can give us.
Yeah, go ahead, Jacques.
It's kind of funny when people were commenting to me about how happy they were about 38th. Almost in the same breath, I kept hearing, when are you going to get on Rispin? So that's not a road and sidewalk, but we don't have enough money for that right now. But I think a lot of people would focus on that. So I agree, maybe something else, but I'd like to have this being done behind the scenes, so like Mike said, that we're not influencing the results or the.
My recommendation here is you want to see the data, and what I'll try to do is what I'll work with Gene is to try to get sort of as many different points of data as you can see, and then you can make the decision about whether or not what the combination of things would be that could go into this measure. But I think you can make this decision as a body on June 16th when you have more information in front of you. Rather than trying to do it at the front end, because I think you might shortchange the process if we said, okay, we're not going to ask anything about a road, or we're not going to ask about sidewalks, or we're not going to ask about any particular topic. Just get the data, and then you can make the call.
And
what else do we want to ask about?
Once we know about if the library is off the table, that leaves a large palette to ask about things. And like I said, Gene's very good about fashioning questions that will give us the pulse of where the voters would vote if we included certain items.
There was a motion and a second. I believe primarily our focus is the wharf, though. Are we in agreement?
The motion is for the poll.
Okay.
For funding possibilities for the wharf and potentially other projects.
Well, I think it would be good for us to spell them out.
Well, we can do that before we put the measure on the ballot. I mean, we're going to come back and have to decide the actual language of what goes on the ballot. This is way premature for that.
Yeah, but no, oh, I know, but I mean, for him to even be asking the questions, is there any other question that we want him to ask that they would support, that people would support? I mean, they would ask directly, he'd ask directly about the library, he'll ask them about the wharf. Do we want him to ask people about other things that they might support?
John?
As maybe this would answer you, Stephanie, as the city manager stated that he's actually looking towards the results from the Vision Capitola, and that covered, as it's been mentioned already, a lot of the goals that we have in the general plan, which was also a city process that went for 2.5 years. So I anticipate that you'd probably be sharing this with the gentleman and I see you shaking your head. So I think that's a really direct route to enable this person to understand what is currently in the minds of a lot of people here in Capitola. So I would think, from my perspective, I hope that covers it for you too, because it covers a broad swath of issues, and it is aligned with our general plan. And, I think it cuts to some of the main things that are important to us right now.
Ed?
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
If the library measure does not pass, we need every single penny that we would get out of this tax continuation to take care of the wharf and the library. There's no other money there. If you're serious about taking care of the library and talking about the wharf, there is no other money. If the library does pass, then we may have some discussion on this. Yeah. But there's no money left. Yeah. There's nothing to give out.
And Dennis, it's also dependent on the term of how long we're going to extend it, okay? Because we're obviously, if the library doesn't pass, it compounds it. It compounds the amount and the duration, okay? Right.
It's $1 million a year. I mean,
Right.
that's a lot. That's a good amount of money for some projects. So
We're talking about if we're going to fund the library strictly on this, then that's 8 years worth of funding we're going to need that for to supplement what we have to get the library we want. And I'll be clear that that's the first focus.
We have to bond around the tax measure if it should pass and get the money up.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking that number one, I'm very supportive, very confident about the library measure, but if it doesn't pass, then that becomes our first focus. Second place becomes the wharf, and then third is all those other things that we can talk about. Go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think this might help allay some of the concerns. This is from the 2012 poll that we did the last time we were talking about a sales tax measure. And you'll see that, there was A through I plus data on J through Q. So there was, you have the opportunity to test a lot of different priorities, and you see what people identify as extremely important, very important, unimportant. And so this was what we did the last time around. So you can be assured that we're going to test a lot of different ideas. And for example, here we had repairing and maintaining the local streets. We had increasing the number of parking spaces around the city. We had infrastructure, fixing parks, restoring the police department, converting the mansion into a public park, and just testing all those different things. So you're going to have a lot of data the next time you sit down and take a look at this. And so I wouldn't worry too much about culling the list right here and right now.
And remember, we've already done a CIP tax measure, and we've been true to it and spending a lot of money on CIP. But if we look at, again, going back to Vision Capitola, one of the top 10 lists that we can look at and include questions about this in the poll are improved pedestrian safety citywide, including flashing lights, dangerous crosswalks and sidewalks, add bike lanes, improve bicycle safety. So there's pedestrian-centric questions that can be included in the poll that we could bundle into this.
good. I'd forgotten about all those questions.
Yeah. So there's.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Yay. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Good night, Capitola.